I talked to him yesterday. We'll see. We'll sell the house in a couple of weeks.
That house next to us sold. 540.
See the big barn
The
standing
house
up there.
next to us, it's that little house that has the garage in the back.
She's got two places here. I'm over one of the yards. She's got to keep an eye on it. Go help her with a funding problem and the sign down the barn. I just said to Rex, oh my God, Teresa Pierce is there.
And he said she was. Oh, he did. He did.
Oh, you're going to talk to the mayor? Do you have an audience for the mayor? You have to have an audience. You're out there in the car to talk to the mayor.
And she said, way lower.
You like this? No, she's not coming. Her friend Sherry from Canada is back. We're going out drinking and it's a good one. We're going to be in on the half. That's 26 acres. Beautiful place, I tell you.
Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, October the 4th. We're at the Civic Center for our pre-agenda workshop. Please call the roll.
Mr. McLaughlin. Here. Ms. Albrecht.
Here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Wallace. Here. Mr. Putnell.
Here. We don't have a lot on our agenda tonight, but what we have is very important. We have a lot of guests with us here from the fire and ESU folks from both the Bay and Gulf County. And through that, I'll turn it over to you, Mark.
We're actually going to start with Gulf County. I believe their employees here and their director, Houston Whitfield. Chief Bowen with Bay County is stuck in traffic on Tyndall. He texted me he will be here shortly. So we'll start with Mr. Houston, and I'll turn it over to Mel.
Mr. Houston, up here, please, so we can.
I got some information I can give you, but I was hoping Mark would be here first.
We can
And give you.
You want to come back to it?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll skip to the next
Okay.
agenda item and then.
Everything will tie together better.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep, as soon as Bowen gets here, we'll jump back.
All right. Let's talk about surplus property. We have a list of several vehicles here. Looks like a lot of these are the police department. They're all out of the police department and one old air compressor. Obviously, we need to have a sale for these things.
Yes, it's 15 pairs of bunker pants. They're expired, so they're not any good to anybody. Same with the coats. Engine 1 fire truck is the one that needs the brakes, and they do not make the brakes. So that's the 1984 E1 pumper truck with 126,000 miles. 4 squad cars and a 3-phase air compressor that is worn out.
The pumper truck's what I wanted to talk about. You say they don't make brakes for this truck?
Correct. We'd have to special order them roughly $4,000 to $5,000 just to get brakes.
That sounds ridiculous. Are you sure? Because that sounds ridiculous. I'm not so sure about approving this one for sale without some more research. We only have 2 trucks.
Correct, and this one never moves. It barely passed the pump test this year. Odds are it's not passing the pump test next year. It needs a lot of work between the brakes and some other issues. It never leaves our fire station.
What's the estimated value of this truck?
At an auction, depending who comes to the auction, he was thinking roughly $4,000 to $6,000.
Sell it. Need a piece of junk.
What about the other truck? The other truck's the one we were talking about making some major repairs to.
Engine 2 is fully operational.
All right. Anyone else have any other comments or questions about these vehicles? I know we've got too many, we've got more than we need police vehicles.
The whole idea is to sell them, right?
And we need to put this on the agenda as an approval item.
Who would buy, I'm assuming these bunker coats and pants?
I would not sell it.
I was just gonna say toss them since
Yes.
they're expired.
I just need permission
Okay.
since it's city property.
Okay, I know, but I mean, I just, if
You're
they're
right, yes.
expired, I wouldn't wanna
Correct, correct.
go that route.
No other questions? All right, put it on
That's true.
the agenda. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Corey Pudd. Mel?
Our city attorney was in traffic, but he just walked in the door.
Such a deal.
But I'll start, and then he can finish up here with the help of Mr. Novak. The bottom line, everyone knows that back in 1999, the city council was presented with a concept plan, for the PUD in question. Later in that same paragraph in the minutes, it says the motion was made to approve the plan unit development. It didn't say they were approving the concept plan. So there's where our minutes, might be a little shaky from past history, but nonetheless, a PUD expires, a PUD concept does not. If you ask the question, if we approve this, what damage would that do? The answer is very little, except it would change the map. Because in order for the concept plan to move forward, the developer would have to come back with many detailed plans that would answer all the questions anybody could ever have about the development. So this particular ordinance was drawn up by our city attorney, and Mr. Novak had looked at it. So rather than me try to explain that, I'll let him add to it.
My apologies for being late. There was a fairly nasty accident just west of town, but it looked like everybody made it out fine. I didn't have the opportunity to be here for all the discussions you've already had on this matter in prior meetings, so if I'm going into too much detail, or if you just have specific questions, let me know and interrupt me. But this came about after we put all the questions to rest on the other PUD that we were talking about last year, the hotel project. Corey's also owned this other tract of land. To clarify, it's not the hotel property. It's the other side of US 98. It's just north of where we are right now. It's about 88 acres. It was a different application, different process, but it did occur back in '99, so same time frame and same owners. They came to us and wanted confirmation about what the zoning of this property was. As Mel said, in 1999 there was a vote by the council to rezone the property. In this case, the vote was more clear. It was to rezone the property to planned unit development. We have some records from back around that time, but we probably don't have all of them. And there is a decent amount of detail in those records, and there is a color detailed master plan of the property that we think was what was approved back in '99. The Coreys have told us it is. So what the issues are that complicate things is, first, just having a vote to approve a rezoning is an incomplete process. A rezoning is accomplished by adopting an ordinance. So you do have before you to consider potentially next week an ordinance that would be intended to complete that process. It's drafted as if the rezoning already occurred in 99. You're not doing a fresh rezoning. It would be completion of a ratification of what occurred. But then also, as Mel mentioned, the other factor that complicates things is that you probably heard the story before enough times on the hotel project. To get PUD zoning in Mexico Beach, it's generally a two-step process. It involves two rezonings. Initially, there is a concept plan and package submitted, which, if approved, results in a rezoning of the property to PUD concept. So that's the first ordinance. And then following that, as more details are developed about the project, the developer would submit a final development plan, which, when that is approved, is a second rezoning, and that's when the property is finally considered a PUD. So we only have records of one step occurring. The step that occurred, the terminology that was used at the time was planned unit development, not planned unit development concept or PUD concept. But to some extent, I think that the hotel project did influence us on this. We have considered that maybe what was intended was a PUD concept approval, because it really couldn't have been a complete approval all the way through the PUD process unless it had involved two steps. So the Corys have asked us to provide clarity on this, and the way we would do that is either to vote up or vote down on the ordinance that's been provided to you. And that is a good overview, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions you have.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment. We've talked about this several times. It keeps getting kicked down the road. Again, I don't have any problem with the property getting developed. I do have a problem with the process. It is 17 years old, and if we're going to stand on what the minutes say to make an action at the table, I think we should stand on what the minutes say. It was developed as a PUD, and the PUD expired a couple of years after it happened. I have no problem with a new PUD concept being presented on the same property in the same manner, and go through the correct steps.
I agree. I think the council did part of it. They didn't follow through. I don't think it's our job to assume what their intent was. If they didn't follow through, I also feel that Corey property and their lawyer at that time should have said, where's part two? So I agree. I think they need to begin again, and I don't like the idea that we are assuming what the council in 99 intended to do.
Comments? Comments from the floor? We need to put this ordinance on the agenda for a voting meeting next week.
Excuse me, council. I'm Jack Corey, and I understand it's been confusing on both projects. I'd like to clarify something Mayor Tom just said as to when it was obviously approved in 99 by way of the minutes and all the other information we have. You said something, in fact, that it expired in 2 years. And we approached that same scenario last year with the other development, and that was there was only a time frame involved if and when you got a site plan approved. Well, all we're trying to do is get the conceptual plan approved or restated from what the forefathers did in 99. We understand that it'll be a second effort to a developer to come to y'all, and y'all have a lot of influence and yay and nay various things within the development, but the general concept plan is all we're looking to get approved, which is what we had approved in 99, and our understanding is that the zoning is timeless. So surely we weren't told that we needed even an ordinance. As a matter of fact, we shook hands with the council in 99, and we didn't have an attorney at that time. We had engineers who have since retired, But anyway, they too felt like we left here with a conceptual PUD approval, with the understanding or idea in our minds was that when we were prepared to sell the property, then at that point, then they would do final acts necessary to stamp it and actually get started with site plans. All we're trying to do is get a generic effort so that we can show and sell the property. And during that interim, not that we aren't interested in real estate, it was best for us to keep it, so we planted pine trees and played the agricultural thing, but that shouldn't ill affect what was determined back in '99, is my thoughts. Any of you guys that haven't heard a lot of this last year's negotiations on the motel tract, which was a sister to this, we actually had a dual effort in '99. So it's plenty complicated, but I really feel both of them were approved in a conceptual sense, and that's all we're asking for now is to restate that. And then as that'll allow us to go ahead and market the property better, and when people ask us, what can you do on the property? We have to say we don't know for sure. We can't mislead them. The reason we drug through the last deal for a year was because, well, we said we feel like we've got an understanding on the PUD, and then they came up with higher numbers, and everything just kind of blew up. But that didn't mean that we didn't have conceptual plans on both of them. And we got plenty of minutes that unanimously approved it, and it'd be good for the city. And I think Mel's very familiar with PUDs. Is it not the case that once you have a PUD that there might be more influence and more play into the detail of the project by the city than if there were no zoning? I mean, there's no zoning, we could go to a certain number of units per acre, but there would be nothing for the developer or for a buyer to know that he can do without y'all approving every step of the way. And that could be a battle for years. If we do a conceptual idea or plan that people have already studied and approved, then at least they have a guide, and then they can come to y'all with the details within that plan. So we're really just trying to simplify. But
Okay, the property, again, I don't foresee a battle in the future in developing your property with any developer that wants to come along. What I have a problem with is the process for this one, personally. But there's nothing over the last 17 years that kept you from selling this property or parts of this property or coming back with a different plan with subdivisions or anything else.
well, a lot of things are determined with family businesses as to what's going on with family. So, yeah, we had a lot of situations through those years, and we had other projects going, and then our parents passed, and we're getting back to it, and now,
Sure.
it's been tough. But I don't see where it could hurt to approve a conceptual scenario that we have written statements from unanimous approval in '99. You'll still have to come back with a developer with a more formal site plan. We just would rather not skip back 3 steps. We're going back 1 or 2.
Well, I do have one question in my mind too. Why would you want to approve a 17-year-old plan and tie a subsequent owner to that plan? Why would they want to do that? How could that help you sell your
Because
property?
I think it's a good plan still today. And what I've found kind of the hard way is that Mexico Beach loves the fact that it's small and kind of stays the same. That plan fits right now, I wish we had it on the board, fits right now just as well as it did then. There haven't been a lot of changes. That's the beauty of the Mexico Beach. I see that. And I embrace that too. And I've already spent the engineering and all the efforts to design that PUD. And if you want to know something further complicated, not that I would use it for leverage, but during that interim, during that time between then and now, probably about halfway through it, we got the notion that the beach was going to be so big and so expansive by later years that we probably could afford to realign the canal versus the way it is. And then our conceptual plat shows the L-shaped canal and develops around it and tends to the wetlands, deals with the uplands, maybe be a marina, but all that'll be subject to y'all. But anyway, we went to the Corps of Engineers, the DEP, and we actually designed an effort to have twice as many units as we're asking for now. But that involved realigning the canal and a lot of dredging and moves the dirt from one spot to fill the old canal to dig the new canal, and it turned out to be cost prohibitive on that effort. So this is a simple way of both worlds, and I think it's the right thing to do is stick to that older PUD.
Okay. Now make sure we have all of our backup documents, because some of the members of the council have not read everything. We'll just put it again on the agenda for next week. Yes, ma'am. We got a lot of people here. If you don't mind, come to the microphone. This is a workshop. We normally don't make people do that, but there's an awful lot of folks that are interested in something tonight.
This PUD's been going around and around for a long while now. Mr. Corey's a fine person. My husband was on the council when the PUD was first discussed, saying, as our attorney used types words like probability and such from the records, that is not the same, council, as saying it was confirmed to be a PUD. 2 steps, that sounds fine. My main concern is, where are we going with our town? PUDs are coming up. People are talking about hotels. They're talking about large condo areas and such, and we've already got several. Our town was originally for a family-oriented. All of our advertisement is family-oriented. I would say a great majority of the people who moved here were looking for a laid-back, quiet town. We have doctors and lawyers and accountants, and we have so many retired execs and retired military officers beside all of the other people that we have, who wanted a quiet place to go after all the hustle and bustle of their lives. I myself moved here because you're laid back and quiet. Do we want to have a load of hotels and condominiums? Are we just trying to satisfy tourists because we want that almighty tourist dollar? What type of things do we want? Do we want a Walmart next door? Do we want a hotel that's a high-rise, evidently maybe coming down the beach on the Bays County property? This is the things that I think the council, especially this council, this time of life for our community, needs to decide on. Decide, where do you want our town to go? Yes, we need growth, but what kind of growth? And that's really what I think you ought to be deciding on. That will help you decide on PUDs, like Mr. Corey. That will help you decide on businesses on 98 where they want to change the next lots to them that are residential to commercial. This is the type of thing you need to be thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move on? Are we ready now to go back? Okay, we're going to go back to the first agenda item, fire ESU discussion. Okay, who's orchestrating that now?
Yes, Your Honor, we'll get it started. Luckily, Mr. Bowen and Mr. Smith did get by the traffic on Tyndall Parkway, so they're here now. I'd like to think that most everyone's here to listen to the discussion on the ESU and fire department. I think it's wonderful to have the turnout that we have this evening. Keep in mind as we go forward, this is a forum for discussion. It's not a forum for yelling, pointing fingers, placing blame, things of that sort. I have nothing else, Your Honor. Mark, it's yours.
All right, if I could have Chief Bowen and Houston, if you want to stand with him. I think, like you said, a lot of your stuff goes together. Good evening, sir.
Good to see you.
I'll turn it over to you if you want to share this point we talked about on the phone that you had with the questions.
Sure. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Mark Bowen. I'm the Chief of Emergency Services for Bay County. Glad to be here in Mexico Beach. It's rare that I'm here in uniform. Most of the time I'm not. It's a wonderful place to visit, and I do so regularly. I have gotten some emails recently from people who are concerned about their emergency services for one reason or another. New residents here, maybe, expected something. I'm from Atlanta. I can tell you when I moved to Lynn Haven, things were different. But I've gotten some emails, and I've gotten some information from people who feel like maybe the county isn't doing enough for Mexico Beach. So I wanted to come here tonight to answer any questions that anybody has about the services the county provides, the emergency services that we provide, the interface that we have with Mexico Beach Emergency Services, and that's why I'm here. So I'll be here till it's over, and may not have all the answers, but I can get them.
Chief, could you run over our basic agreements that we have now, as you understand them?
The only monetary agreement that we have with Mexico Beach is really with Gulf County EMS. Bay County's EMS service is a fee service. In other words, there's no tax money that goes into our EMS service. Medicare, Medicaid, commercial insurance, and private pay is how Bay County funds our ambulance service. It's a very unique way to fund an ambulance service that has almost as many transports as Leon County does, but that's what we're trying to do. We pay $36,000 a year from that fund, that those payers pay into that fund. People who are transported who are not Mexico Beach citizens pay into that fund. That fund pays $36,000 to Gulf County because they're closer. We've got a wonderful relationship with them, have had for as long, certainly, as I've been here. They can get here quicker. They've got the same level of care. They can get people where they need to go. I don't know how they fund their system, but I can tell you their rates are much lower than ours. Our rates are $1,200 for an ALS call, $20 a mile. We are funding something without taxpayer dollars. Don't know that we'll be able to continue that, but right now it's holding its own. We all know the geography that we face in terms of Bay County serving the citizens of Mexico Beach, but the EMS fund takes nothing from the general fund. It does not get any revenue from the citizens of Mexico Beach, nor does the fire service in unincorporated Bay County, which I manage. The cities have their own fire departments. We don't provide anything other than automatic and mutual aid into those cities. We provide dispatch services, and that's where the general fund that people in Mexico Beach pay to the county, that's where a part of that general fund goes to 911 call taking and predominantly to dispatch. We dispatch all the fire departments in Bay County, including Mexico Beach. We do the best job we can with that, and we want to improve those services however we can. But the emails, and again, it's been a handful. It's not like there's been this outcry, but there's people that, from what I have gotten, think that we're not doing enough for them. Well, the unincorporated area of the county pays a fire tax that Mexico Beach does not pay. And so our fire services go to those entities. Our fire service, our MSTU tax, we do pay the city of Mexico Beach $15,000 every year to take care of an unincorporated area that's, obviously unreachable by us. Those are the two agreements that are there that, basically where money changes hands that I'm aware of. So does that kind of cover it? So,
We got some basic questions that I think kind of start from square one, just to bring everybody up to speed. If you could answer the first question, the most basic question is, are municipalities required by statute to provide fire protection services?
I'm not qualified to answer that question. That would be something to ask the Bureau of Fire Standards, the state of Florida, or your city attorney. I would have to ask my county attorney. I can tell you how things have gone in the county. I moved here in '94. I came from a place where we didn't know what a volunteer firefighter was, and when I moved to Bay County, everything was volunteer firefighting. So I can tell you how things went for Bay County, and how we went from our building official being the authority having jurisdiction for fire code issues over to myself being that because we kind of, migrated toward a career department. We still depend heavily on volunteers. But I'm not qualified to answer that question. I have an opinion, but I'm not sure anybody wants that. I'm not a resident of Mexico Beach, but.
Right. One of the basic things for us even being in business as a government is to provide the protection of our citizens. So whether it's required or not, we want to do it.
Well, if I could, I live in Lynn Haven, and all I can do here, knowing that there's concerns and things, is kind of try to put myself in the place of a Mexico Beach resident. And I can tell you that from some of the emails I've gotten where people have said maybe they want the county to come provide their fire protection or something like that, that puts another layer of government in between the citizens and the service they're getting. I think we're talking about the same thing here. One of the reasons the city is formed is police and fire. Those things are things that I believe a city provides, and a city certainly should be in control of. In the county, our progression through 10 not-for-profit corporations that provided fire protection, through consolidation, through decades of working with people, a lot of different opinions and a lot of expertise. But when we consolidated and got a funding stream going in '83, I was just out of high school then, but that's when they passed the MSTU. In '95, I was here, and that's when the county fire service was formed, consolidated, and we had 10 not-for-profit volunteer corporations, 2 of which had career people working for them, that were brought together under a county system. And at that point, the county commission decided to be directly in control of that level of life safety protection, whereas before they had been taking that tax and paying these different not-for-profit corporations. They had very little control, and it was a situation where, okay, there's a problem, and an elected official will get a call, a county official will get a call, and then, well, here's the fire chief, call him. And it's to me, and I'm biased, I'm a fire chief, but I work for government, and I'm accountable to the citizens wherever I work. And what I saw with these not-for-profit corporations was a different dynamic. It was new to me, and I learned about it. And we still have 2 going very strong. They provide volunteers to us. They actually put a lot of people through EMT and paramedic school that we then hire. We diminish our volunteers ourselves because we hire a lot of them. But I do believe it's a basic responsibility of government to provide those services. EMS, fire, and police are the most important things there are to me.
No question that the distance between Mexico Beach and your facilities is quite extensive. There are a couple of other districts in our near vicinity, like Overstreet, St. Joe Beach. Is there a particular reason why we cannot consolidate with any of those?
The city of Mexico Beach, in my view, and again, this is great. I'm being able to say things that I'm really not educated enough to say things about, but you can do whatever you want. You can contract with whoever you want for whatever you want. The fact that we're working with Gulf County to make sure that the closest resource gets to you and that they're working with us, it's the pleasure of this council to do what's best for the city. So one of the challenges we've had at the county are jurisdictional lines. One of the reasons that we're proud to dispatch all of the city fire departments is because now we're doing something for them, is we want them to come in the unincorporated area of the county. On any given day, if everybody's at work, I've got 16 people for 140 square miles. I don't have a lot of firefighters, career firefighters. So I need those cities to come into our areas. So being able to dispatch them, being able to provide a service to them, which also frees up their police department to concentrate on officer safety in their realm, is something that we can provide to them. And so those agreements are there, and there's no reason that there couldn't be agreements between Gulf County and Mexico Beach to do the same thing, or us and Mexico Beach. We just got this huge air base in between us. It's, I just sat for 25 minutes and, got a piece of it. It is what it is. It's geography.
There's a real nice Bay County fire station on the south end of Youngstown. How was that funded and by whom and who pays and all that?
The MSTU, that was about, I want to say 2002. It was post September 11th, so about 2002. We built 3 county fire stations. Those were the first 3 fire stations that Bay County ever owned. All the other stations were owned by volunteer, not-for-profit corporations, people who worked really hard to provide fire services in communities where there were none. And so we built 3 fire stations, and that was back when we didn't have a lot of career personnel. Funding was good. We had the money to build for the future. And now we're staffing the station in Youngstown. We're about to staff the station in Sandhills, both with federal grants. We'll pick up those salaries after 2 years. And then Thomas Drive was the other station. So we built 3 stations, 13,000 square feet ballpark each. Criticized at the time that they were too big. Where are the firefighters? What are you doing building these stations? But the county had the foresight to build for the future. Since then, we've built another one on the west end that is similar to those fire stations that meet NFPA standards and things like that. We have also slowly absorbed the other stations that are owned by our volunteers because most of them just disappeared. They didn't want to have to deal with the business end of things. So we've absorbed Bayou George, Southport, forgive me, we've absorbed several. Thomas Drive Volunteer Fire Department Incorporated, which is still a viable corporation. They're a big part of what we do. They still own 2 stations. Technically, Highland Park Volunteer Fire Department owns a station, but there's nobody, if you can find somebody that will stand up and be a trustee for that corporation, I'd love to meet them. We can't find anybody yet. So we're slowly bringing those in. They're not in the right spot. They're not built in at PA standards. They can't support a career fire department the way that we're running today. So we're looking for other places. But the MSTU built those fire stations. There was no general fund taxes, nothing other than the MSTU that went into building those stations. And that's how we get things done. We've also got an impact fee that goes into the MSTU, unincorporated Bay County. Citizens pay into that. So that's kind of our fire station story.
So if we wanted to fund a new fire station, a new truck or something, there's avenues to do it, not just from the general fund. We can do our own MSTU, we could do fire assessment fees, things of that sort. But bottom line, the net effect is it's still going to cost money.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know enough about Mexico Beach and what's done with the current taxes or anything else, but I can tell you that from a fire perspective, it has been very helpful for us to have a fund where we're not competing with the sheriff, we're not competing with roads, we're not competing with things that, at the end of the day, I've seen buildings like this full of people concerned about emergency services. Every day, my elected officials at the county, every day their phone rings about roads. Every day their phone rings about things, and it's very rare that they get the emergency service. I wish there were more concern about it. But having that MSTU, which was a specific tax that would only pay for fire services, was very helpful for us. In the bad years, we laid off some firefighters, so it can cut both ways. But most of the time, we're not competing with any other resources inside of our government entity to provide fire protection, and most of the time that's very helpful.
The Insurance Services Office does inspections every few years, and the ISO rating is very important to a community, and that determines what rate of insurance people pay on their homeowners. Our rating now is not all that bad, but when we get inspected later this year, first of next year, whenever, we expect that to not be the case. So the rating is either 1 through 10, is that the correct?
Correct. 1 is the best there is. 10 is the same as having no fire department at all.
Right. Right now, we're about a 5 or a 6, but we expect to be closer to a 9, perhaps, later on. No question, our water facilities with the hydrants, things of that sort, is in excellent shape now because we just redid our water system. But in light of the fact we have trucks that aren't in all that good a shape, we have a facility that is questionable at best. You know, the number of volunteers that we used to have is down a little from previous years. So all those together will probably mean that we will get a higher rating. Right now, I don't want to say no one cares, but I don't want to say that. But until those insurance rates go up, that is when the rubber really meets the road, and we're going to have a lot of mad people in the community. So it's definitely in our best interest to pick up the slack and do a little better job. You know, Mark has been working with you in your office and Mr. Smith as well for quite some time. And, you know, I've been in a lot of communities in my professional life, and you're far away at the top of the list on the kindness you have showed us, the willingness to help us any way you possibly can. So we appreciate all of the work that, you know, your folks do for us. I know you want to do more, but usually when you do more, that means money. And nobody's got an unlimited pocketbook, unfortunately.
I have one question in that area. You familiar with the new half-cent sales tax that's been proposed?
To the extent that I believe the county wants that to pass. I think that's about what I know about that.
They call it a brick and mortar half-cent sales tax. The brick and mortar would be, if we need a firehouse, we can build a firehouse with that money if that tax is passed. But we're a very small town. We get a very small percentage of that. Would you recommend that we do a county-city initiative to try to, for example, build a firehouse with some of that money?
If you're talking about the half-cent sales tax, all I can tell you is what I know about that. And every time there's an opportunity when revenue is flying past me one way or the other, I'll reach out and try to grab some of it, ask my budget director, my finance director, is there any way that is going to affect county fire, county EMS, county dispatch. And with this, I'm not in that loop really. So I don't see that for the county being something that's going to be spent on fire or EMS. How it gets spent in Mexico Beach, I think, has probably a lot to do with how this council makes decisions and how you interact with Bay County elected officials. That's just a guess, but that tax is not something I'm even knowledgeable about, which should tell you that it's not something that they're looking at going toward emergency services.
Yeah. Mark, do you have questions that you needed to answer, or?
I don't.
I have a question.
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that Bay County built 3 fire stations. So what would be Mexico Beach's first step to have Bay County build a fire station here?
The general fund in Bay County, to my knowledge, and nothing's absolute, but our fire stations have been built with an MSTU tax paid by the citizens who live in unincorporated Bay County. So if you wanted Bay County to come in and build a fire station in concert with you, or just have the county come build it, they're probably going to go get an architect and get a design and work with you to find a spot, and then hand you a bill, hand you an invoice. The general fund pays for, and the general fund pays for the jail, the court system, the supervisor of elections, the property appraiser, the tax collector. It pays for this this bigger scheme of government that my divisions, by and large, are not a part of in terms of funding streams, except for our dispatch operations, which we're very proud of. And again, I don't want to diminish the fact that the people in Mexico Beach pay county taxes. You do, and it's important, and you should get your money's worth out of it, whatever it is. The part of it that I can control is the dispatch of your fire department, the dispatch of other fire departments, and any other communications issues that we can manage, our emergency management operations, things like that. I don't know what the answer to that question is in terms of the county building a fire station in Mexico.
Okay, so in actuality, Bay County did not build the other 3 stations. They were built within Bay County.
No, Bay County
They
Commission,
paid-
the Bay
so
County.
how much did they pay? What was the percentage
The
that Bay County?
The Bay County Commission passed in the early 80s a municipal services taxing unit on the people who live in the unincorporated area of Bay County. The current millage, and I had to ask my budget director
It's 1
for
point
this.
something.
Yeah, it's forgive me here. It's me asking the staff and them telling me that they don't know, and then it's 1.38 mils right now that's levied on the people who live in the unincorporated areas of Bay County, and a mill is a mill, it's the same everywhere. That's levied on the people who live in unincorporated Bay County, and it only goes to fire protection. So the county passed that in the early 80s. They began to collect that money, and when they got to the point where they wanted to build fire stations, they used that money for the debt service on those stations, and we're still paying for those stations. I think they were 20-year notes. So Bay County did build those fire stations, but they built it with a segregated tax that only went for fire protection.
Do we have anybody from the audience that has a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do. I appreciate all the information, and I appreciate everybody coming here and talk about the issue. But I don't know formally what the issue is, and before I can apply what I'm hearing to any thought process, I wonder if you could state what we're looking at and why we're looking at it. A lot of rumors I've heard, but I don't know anything else.
Actually, I'm going to defer that one to you, Mel. I haven't read those emails he's talking about either. They didn't come to me.
The reason there's discussion, of course, is we have noticed over the past few years the deterioration of our firefighting facilities. The number of volunteers has gone down. We realize ISO rating's probably going to go up. Everything together has led us to try to find a solution to fix all that. The only real solution is more money to pay for that, and that's where we're trying to find a way to do that. Having Bay County try to help us is certainly a way to go, but their funds are limited as well. And I think when they said that the mill rate for the unincorporated Bay County is 1.3 something, you have to ask yourself, if we want a fire station that is sufficient to do the job we want it to do, if we want to get the equipment we need to do that, there may have to be a millage rate increase of that similar amount to help pay for that, or have a massive cutback on the rest of city services, one of the two.
Yes, sir.
I need to go up. I'm not loud enough.
I think you're loud enough, Bob.
Mark, one thing we need is equipment. Nobody knows that. And that building, whatever. Can y'all help us in grant writing to be able to get grants to do that? There's a lot of grants out there. But we need somebody to be able to do it instead of just saying millage rates. Work to do grants to try to get the proper equipment, the engines, the suits, everything to build. I've heard of so many people being able to do grants, but we need somebody that can help to do it. Now, I know you got some people.
We can help with the grants extent we're helping with ISO, meaning that my communications chief, my people that work for us now who, believe me, we have obligations that we're trying to attend to now, we can help. But I don't want to create any unrealistic expectations. I can assure you, when the city of Panama City gets a grant, or the city of Panama City Beach gets a grant, or city of Callaway, or any of the other cities gets a grant, they do it because somebody in that city worked on it and did it. Do we help them? Yes, particularly with emergency management. We through hazard mitigation and all of the things that are, basically state and federally funded, we do our best to help the cities with that. Post-disaster, we try to bring the cities together so that we can, any public assistance that has to be provided by FEMA and things like that, we coordinate that. Would we be willing to help? Absolutely, we'd love to. I mean, it would be a huge feather in our cap if somebody on our staff was able to get a grant that got something for Mexico Beach. That would be huge. But I don't want to create any unrealistic expectations. It's one of those deals where you get what you pay for. That's why we've gotten what we've got right now. That's what, looking at where the county was when I first went to work there and where we are now, it took that revenue stream. Our volunteer fire departments were the spaghetti suppers. They were just hanging together by a thread until that revenue stream got there. And then as soon as that revenue stream got there and started going to the 10 departments, they started fighting over the money and all of that started happening. But that revenue is what got everything kicked off. So can we help with grants? Yes. Will we? Yes. Just like with the ISO things that we're doing. But all that is another bureaucrat at the county trying to help you. It's not good. I don't want to create any unrealistic expectations that we can really do anything to get you out of a hole if you're in a hole in terms of your file service.
I realize we're gonna have to come off that hill to be able to do it.
And let me say this too, the grant world back after 9/11 was tremendous. I mean, it just, that's when it all started and everything. And what you've seen over the years, it's dwindled down a lot. So for the fire service, there's an assistant firefighter grant. I'm sure y'all put in for the past, most everybody does. It's once a year. They have certain priorities that they try to focus on. And if you go after the equipment that is on their high priority list, you have a pretty good chance of getting it. And we can definitely help your folks try to be more successful possibly in doing that. We've been pretty successful in it. But you have to go with what the priorities are. It's not going to be a fire station. An apparatus, which is something you probably really need, is not going to be high on the priority. You might get, self-contained breathing apparatus. You might be able to get turnout gear for your firefighters, things like that. But some of the higher ticket items are going to be much harder to get through that type of grant process. The SAFER grant that the chief was talking about in San over here, put 6 firefighters in. That's something that you could get, but ultimately the city has to commit to keep those people if you hire career firefighters with that same program. The other things, what he was talking about through emergency management, if there's a disaster, there's a good chance that, we would be able to come in and help you write a grant to do something with a building possibly. But, other than that, there's just not that much out there anymore. We'd be going after it if we were able to as well, but it's really dried up.
The state and the federal government, the way they manage, or the way they allow us to manage our grants, it's really, it's mind-boggling that there's money available to elevate one person's house, which we have done these. We have elevated one person's house and got them out of, a flood situation, helped our flood rating, and there's money available for that, but they won't, as Jody was saying, they won't give this kind of money to a city trying to build a fire station, or else thousands of cities across the United States are going to want that money, and the grant is not going to be effective anymore. So it's government at its finest. So we can help with grants, but I think that from what I've learned about your fire situation, y'all are kind of at the point the county was at when I went to work there. This is a time where some really tough decisions have to be made. Some really
before I reconciled with them personally. And I hope I did before many of them passed. People have their hearts in this stuff. But eventually, it's going to get to a point where I believe any city has to have a city fire department. And that way, you have the influence through your elected officials and the people who work for them to have direct control over that fire department. And that's what's been so kind of concerning to me with some of the emails is that, wow, because believe me, there's some people on my side of the fence that, let's go take fire control over in Mexico Beach. Let's just go, the government gets bigger. Let's go do that. So some people see that as a feather in the cap. That's not. The city should have its own fire department, in my opinion. And it, it's an expensive operation to run. We used to buy custom trucks. Those are $500,000 a piece now. We'll never buy another one as long as I'm chief. I've tasked everybody that works for me to tell me why we would need a custom when we can buy a commercial apparatus for $260,000, $270,000. And there's been some safety issues, there's been some things, but nothing that comes to the level of $250,000. I can buy 2 for 1 if I get commercial apparatus. There was a day when we would never even dream of getting commercial apparatus. They were involved in customs. That's what fire trucks look like. So it's expensive. It's an expensive thing. The bricks and mortar, the equipment, it is a commitment that the community has to make. And I'll talk forever if you.
Are we paying calls to our volunteer firefighters?
No, sir.
Maybe we ought to think about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, what do we know of the St. Joe Beach Fire Department?
Calls we come.
Well, maybe we could, talk with them. We're close together, maybe we could just combine so we could be with them.
Well, actually, we have folks here to talk about that.
Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Curiosity begs me to ask this. Mel, maybe it shows my ignorance, but how did we afford since 1967 to take care of the costs, because we have had fire? How have we taken care of those volunteers up until this point in time? I know we had, suppers and lunches and hot dog things, but how did we pay for it? More detail, please.
Well, they used to have volunteer fire pay, on-call pay, things of that sort. We don't have it anymore. When you buy a hot dog at the Music in the Park, is there an expectation that that money goes to help buy equipment for the fire department?
Yes.
It doesn't. It goes into the fund that the fire department has to benefit the community. In other words, you're not buying bunker gear, things of that sort.
Well, have we bought it? I know that we bought surplus and we have bought, we've had, I think, grants to buy. I know for some of the things for the police, and I thought for the fire department truck. So, what money have we actually used? Surely hot dog money and pancake breakfast money has not bought that.
No, ma'am. The general fund pays for the equipment in the fire department. And we have a budget item now for that. The question was salaries, and no, we don't pay them a salary, they're volunteers. But the fire department is supported by the general fund.
But they've been talking about, all the people have been talking tonight about, not just the salaries, they've been talking about the equipment, firemen and EMS equipment, and the emergency vehicles, plus the building. So they're,
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about now too. The City of Mexico Beach is an independent corporate body of itself, and that's why they've got their side figured out on the unincorporated area. Unincorporated mean all the county folks.
Linda's question, I knew that.
Yeah, so we're. Well, first of all, in my humble opinion, a building does not put out fires, but you gotta have equipment wherever you store it, and proper equipment, and right turnout gear, and trained firemen, and the city is responsible for all those kind of things, and they're my first priority. I'd love to see us have a nice unit and a permanent situation coming up in the future. But you're right, Bobby, we're going to have some help from somewhere we can't just keep taxing. But the equipment is very high on my priority list. We're already spending, I want to say, how many dollars for fire and ESU?
It's been going down since 2012, currently 25,000.
For the fire department, but ESU is close to 100.
Well, now that we combine them as of Saturday, it's 214 for both combined.
$214,000 of your tax dollars are going to these two services now, so it's not that we're not funding.
That's, yeah.
Continuation on that
Yeah.
question just left my brain.
Welcome to the world.
And actual operating of fire and ESU is only 50. The rest is wages and equipment. And to go back to the MSTU question earlier, if we were to adopt the same rate that the county has, it would generate $495,000 a year.
Mr. Mayor, it rarely happens that I remember what I. But I was under the assumption that in the past, we had on call someone to write grants and such to look for them for us during Al's term as mayor, that we had hired somebody to do that. Am I incorrect?
Preble Rish writes grants for us.
No, there was some other individual who we had asked.
I don't know that person.
Well, we did apply for the AFG grant this past year, and we were turned down.
This was an individual. I'm sorry.
Actually, I just identified a person that is a grants writer and told Mel about this lady on Monday. And we're looking at seeing how successful she is for Gulf County. Matter of fact, she's writing some grants for Gulf County. She's a staff person in Gulf County as of, I think, this year.
Thank you very much.
One of our officers' mothers has also come forward to volunteer to help us write grants.
Good. Who's next to speak, Mark?
Next, I'll turn it over to Houston.
Well, I was asked a question, why don't we put an ambulance out here? I'll start with that. Gulf County EMS is subsidized by ad valorem tax, anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000 a year. We get the balance for our budget from our billing, which is deliver $1 million that we collect. We have
Can you speak more into the microphone, please?
We have a budget right now of $1,400,000 something. We run about 2,600 calls a year in the county, counting Mexico Beach. Of those, I'm fixing to give you some figures now, and they're going to be between January the 1st and September the 28th. During that period of time, we
Just a
run.
moment. Please turn it off.
All right, during that period of time, we run 1,600 calls in the south end of the county. We operate 2 trucks in the south end of the county that's covering those calls. Of the 1,600 calls, 155 of them were out here in Mexico Beach.
How many? I'm sorry?
155 in this 9-month period. Of the 155 calls, 44 of them was local residents, and 68 of them was tourists or out-of-town people. In addition to that, which makes up the 155 calls, we had 43 cancellations. Now, when we run a cancellation, it costs us something like about at least $70 a run. So that's $3,010 that we've actually lost out here responding on 1066 calls. Response time. Our response time out here, between, depending on where you go to, is anywhere between 11 to 12 minutes and 20 minutes on this end of the beach. We have other areas in our county like the Cape, Overstreet, Howard's Creek. They have about the same response time. Our payer mix in the entire county that we serve comes out to, a payer mix is a combination of Medicare, Medicaid, indigent, self-pay, and self-insured. A combination of all that on bills, on runs that we build, we average $459 per run. Out here on the beach, we average, Mexico Beach, we average $330 per run. So our payer mix is a little less out here for some reason. To give you an idea of what we've done out here at Mexico Beach, we bill for 112 runs. We bill out $108,206. Of that, we collected $37,070. We still have an outstanding amount that we're going to have to write off. We might get a little bit in later on. Of $74,000. Several years ago, when we started doing this service out here, we didn't charge anything, and we got to looking at it, what it was costing us to do this, and we run a survey from our building company and found out that $36,000 would more or less kind of break us even several years ago. So that's where the $36,000 come in, just to try to break even on furnishing the service out here. Since then, this has went up. We haven't adjusted anything, and hopefully, maybe the payer mix will improve some. So where we at right now, we have other areas that's also requesting another truck to stand by, like the Cape. Well, we just don't have the funds, or you don't have the call volume out here to do it. To buy a new truck and staff it and run it 1 year out here, where you furnishing the building and the utilities, we're looking at nearly $500,000.
For one truck?
For one truck, staffed with paramedic and the EMTs, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. After the first year, after we purchased the truck and major equipment for it, you're still looking at about $350,000, $400,000 just for the staffing and the little bit of supplies you use. There's another question from an email that come up. We don't want to go to Sacred Heart, we want to go to Bay or wherever. One of the emails didn't know what facility offered what services. Our paramedics are trained to decide where you need to go really. If you're having a stroke or having a STEMI or major trauma, something like that, we're going to direct you to Bay, which is 25 miles away from here. If you have something minor and it can be taken care of at Sacred Heart, we'll suggest you go there if you want to. That's about 15 miles away. We're not affiliated with Sacred Heart. We don't receive any funds from them or any kickbacks. So it's up to the individual where they want to go. Now the state dictates some transports, like a trauma alert, it has to go to a trauma facility, which would be the Bay Medical. So our hands are kind of tied at that point. If you want to go to Sacred Heart and we know you don't need to, we got to refuse to take you there because Sacred Heart's not going to take you once you get there. So it's the patient's choice wherever he wants to go. If he's from out of town, we can cancel him on where he does need to go. Do y'all have any questions?
Since Mark has taken over as the ESU director, the number of volunteers has increased dramatically, and I think the relationship between Gulf County and RESU has gotten better over that time as well?
I would like to touch on that too. I have had no complaints from our paramedics or EMTs on ESU. They're a major help for y'all out here. They're doing what their job scope says they can do for the patient. They assisted us in locating the patients and getting them out of high risers or wherever. They're just doing a real great job.
Could you talk about?
Any comments on those?
The four-wheel drive vehicle getting off the beach is tremendous that we've called out there.
Could you talk about the level of care? In other words, there's only certain things
Okay,
that a memorandum of understanding is allowed.
A while back, we done a memorandum of understanding, and this memorandum addressing things that was old school that we don't do much anymore, like backboarding. We backboard when we know there's a spinal injury, but they found out later, recently, that backboarding all patients is more detrimental to them than helpful, because you manipulate the body, you twist it around, and just doing that before we get here might cause permanent damage to them or injuries to them. So what we're recommending, unless they got to be moved out of a hot highway or something like that, just maintain C-spine until we get there. Then we can assess what motors and sensory nerves they have before we move them, and then we'll know they wasn't damaged by making the move. Another reason we've done a memorandum of understanding is oxygen. Oxygen is a medication which is controlled by the Department of Health. You got to have a medical director to do that. Now, to get around that, our medical director, Dr. Pablo, helped me work up these protocols. And we went over each item because you're working under his license. And that's why we wanted to kind of put an outline on what you did. So these can be flexible if you see something else you want to do later. You used to have somebody out here, Diana. She was a paramedic.
Correct.
And being a seasoned paramedic, we allowed her to do any paramedic skills that we do. So on the on the ESU truck at that time, you had a monitor, you had cardiac drugs, and we can still do something like that, but you've got to have a seasoned medic that can react on his own, which is going to be at least a year's experience, and he's going to have to be approved by a medical director. EMT skills, the only thing you do on those is O2, and you're really not going to hurt a patient with O2. There's other things like checking blood sugars. The state just says you can't check a blood sugar if you're an EMT. It's an invasive procedure, but everybody at home does it on their own. So that really doesn't make sense, but that's just the way the state is. We can't carry them on our BLS trucks. So that's why it's kind of limited as what was in this memorandum of understanding. But like I said, we'd be glad to go over it with you and your personnel if you want to go over it again. And
I have a question. We have a few paramedics and EMTs that work for you, that work for us also as volunteers. Given that memorandum of understanding, they cannot function as a paramedic when they're working here, correct?
If we know they're going to be like a paramedic, like if Deborah was doing a shift out here, she could function as a medic because she's already under a protocol.
Under your, okay.
Yeah.
But we couldn't hire a paramedic that doesn't work for your protocol to work here with that memorandum?
Yes, but it would have to be one that our medical director approved and had experience.
So let me see.
And you're going to have to assume the liability for them. They wouldn't come under any of the county's liability.
You have a question right here.
Mr. Whitfield, let me see if I understand exactly what you and Adrian were just talking about. We have EMTs who work here in Mexico Beach, but we do not have paramedics.
Yes, we do.
Is that correct?
We have both that fill in out here.
We have paramedics who do fill in here, but because they are not covered under our memorandum of understanding, they are not allowed to do the advanced life support type things that paramedics are allowed to do. Is that correct?
The memorandum of understanding came about when you didn't have any paramedics. If you have a paramedic out here, like Diana was, we can work with that individual, and she would follow the same protocols as we use on our truck, which is a book about that thick.
Yes, sir. But what I'm trying to understand is, since Diana Apple left, we have no paramedics who are covered under Dr. Pablo's license. Is that correct? We have 2 that are covered under his license.
Technically, right?
Who are they now?
Not as, okay, true.
Well, he's not gonna be qualified for
Not
another
yet.
year or so.
So basically, we do not.
Right.
Have not since 2012.
Since 2012?
Mhm.
I thought Diana.
2013, early 13. Diana left in 13.
All right. So we have no paramedics who can operate currently because they're not covered under Dr. Pablo's license. And we have EMTs who are extremely limited in what they are allowed to do. Is that correct?
Well, they're limited by what the state says they can do, not by what we say they can do.
So in other words, what I'm trying to get at is we have very limited care that we can have other than
First responder.
first responder. As opposed to what we used to have when we had paramedics who could do
Well,
things.
you had a paramedic that was able to do it when they was on duty.
Yes.
Not 24
Otherwise,
hours.
you still had EMTs or first responders.
Thank you.
Questions?
The only other thing I have, I do have some Gulf County paramedics here that joined us tonight. Lately, there's been a lot of rumors about me and my department, questioning things, comments, stuff like that. I'd like to give them the opportunity to speak about the improvements they've seen over here, the working relationship between Mexico Beach and Gulf County, especially over the last few months, as it has gotten tremendously better. Just like to give them the opportunity to speak, or for anybody to ask them any questions for on-scene type stuff.
That are of you.
And I like Lee saying they are doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
This is Miss Sonia. She's one of the paramedics with Gulf County.
I would like to say thank you very much, and this is not as a friend. Professionally speaking, Mark has done an outstanding job. To come into something like this where there was not basically a program set up, he has had to set schedules and make sure people are there to cover this area, and they get firsthand help before we arrive to them. That is extremely valuable. A lot of lives are saved because someone is there immediately to start CPR. And I don't know if that was what she was trying to say before. EMTs or paramedics, either one, if you do not know CPR, you're not much good out there in the field. That is the most important thing to know. So what ESU provides, EMTs and paramedics, is all the same. You have to do your basic life-saving before a paramedic can be any good. We have to know that first. So they do the same thing. If they see that a patient needs CPR, they start it, and that is extremely important to us. If it's started before we get there, then that patient has a chance. Again, Mark has done an excellent job. He's done an excellent job in selecting some of the people that work for him. They're very dependable. When they are not available, he does fill in. A lot of times that I've known someone else was on duty, he comes in anyway. That you don't find very often. So that's very wonderful for him to do, and I do appreciate that, all the sacrifices he's made for us.
My name's Nick Dickinson. I've been with Gulf County EMS for like 2 years now. Just got hired on with Bay County Fire Rescue. I just graduated paramedic school as well. I just got my state license as well. I'm working on my charge medic status. I've worked for Mark for about a year now. At first, I was just a first responder, brand new into everything. When Mark came in, it was kind of a system in shambles. The schedules were very conflicting. Nobody knew when they were going to work. And again, I haven't written anything, so I'm just kind of spitting what my mind's got right now. But ever since Mark has come in, he's kind of just given me more motivation to work here. And since he has worked here, he's brought in quite an amazing staff, honestly. He's brought in, how many Tyndall firefighters do we have? 3?
We have 5 certified firefighters now.
Yeah, we have 3 certified firefighter EMTs from Tyndall alone. They have myself from Gulf County EMS in Bay County. They have, what do we have, Tucker, and then, is that it? And then Brandy. So we have another 2 EMTs from Gulf County EMS that come over and work here. The list is phenomenal. And I just hired a new gal as well, who's also going through paramedic school. So I'd just like to say that Mark has done a tremendous job in the year that he's been given, and the list of employees that he has, the qualifications are phenomenal. So I'm just like food for thought there. So thank you, Mark.
How much you paying these people, Mark?
He can double my volunteer salary anytime he'd like. My name is Deborah Thrasher. I became an EMT in 1985. I became a paramedic in 1988, and I am the paramedic that backs up Mark here on Mexico Beach. I respond from St. Joe Beach when I am off duty. The problem is I work 2 jobs in Gulf County, so there are a lot of times I'm not available. I've never had any problems with Mark or any of his people. They are always helpful. I am going to be 61 years old, and they are my manpower. If I need someone extricated from a building and I can't do it, they're going to do it. Americans are getting heavier, and it's not uncommon for us to have a 400-pound patient to come out of the 3rd floor. And I know that these guys are going to be here for us when we need them. So yeah, you have a paramedic backup for this area when I'm off duty, and I'll come at any time he needs me. All he has to do is pick up the phone and call me.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else?
That's all I have, sir.
Only thing I will say is that we've been working on a way to reconfigure the departments to combine them in a little better manner, and we'll get the details out to the public when those are solidified.
And I will make one comment about the funding for EMS. We have improved that tremendously over the last year. It was all messed up, and we're putting a lot of money into the people who are working shift. It's not a lot per hour, but it's certainly a lot. As I said, we only had 17 calls a month over the last 9 months, but it's certainly a valuable program for Mexico Beach, and it's something we absolutely need with an aging population as we have. Let's move along. Water and sewer ordinance. Mr.
Can I
Welling.
ask one quick question just
Yeah.
before we go? I'm just curious, Mark, what would be, I know we've talked about fire, EMS, sounds like EMS is covered better than fire. What are the top 5 things this city needs for our fire department, say within the next up to 3 years, in your opinion?
I don't honestly know if that's a fair question. If I can narrow it down to just 5.
Okay.
But I can definitely, I do have an inventory list that I can send to you of what we need, and you can see everything that.
Is it prioritized to?
It is not, but I could probably prioritize it for you.
That would be good, but I think it also would be good for our citizens to see that, because if we're gonna have to start asking more money, they kind of need to know where it's coming from, what it's going for. And it's more than just, mortar and bricks, because money to fire an ESU is actually lives and memories.
Yeah, I can get you that.
Thank you.
Could you shoot that to all
I'll shoot to everybody, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, water and sewer ordinance, Mr. Welling. Anyone that feels like they need to leave, that's fine.
report up there?
It's 79 minutes and it's not about time.
Yes, sir, Mr. McCarville.
If I may, just one more item before y'all move on to the fire department issue. I'm with the city of St. Joe, have been for 11 years. We do have a mutual aid agreement, and basically, and I speak for the beaches and any of the Gulf County fire departments, you need us, you call us, we come. Plain and simple.
Thank you, Dr. Okay.
All right, water and sewer is back on the agenda because we had some confusion with the base rate charging for those who turn off. I don't know where I got confused and went off into the weeds, but I assumed the base rate we were going to charge was going to be the base rate people pay for 0 to 4,000 gallons. There's been discussion about moving that back to a lower rate than that, taking out our consumption of 4,000. Want to get direction on that. And the other thing is, we learned today that water and sewer rate changes need to be approved the same way as our budget, with public hearings and that whole process. So we'll have to send a letter out with the water bills, telling them we're going to have an increase, and then we'll have to have a hearing date. So we will not get this adopted next week. But we have never done it that way before, but we have a statute.
A thought in that area. We have indeed had public hearings on the budget.
Not on the rate change, with a written letter to every water and sewer customer in our area.
Sounds like our attorney's trying to make more money.
He found the statute today. We've never done it that way, so I didn't know to do it that way, but we will follow that way.
Post office
What
make
year
more
was
money.
that? 18, what was that statute?
I have no idea what year the statute.
All right, let's talk about the cutoff rate, the base charge for cutoff. If you have the debt service for water, the debt service for sewer, and the administrative charge for these two funds, what is that number? We talked about $56, the whole budget.
If you subtract the 4,000 gallons at 324, it comes out, if that's the way you find it. Let me find my sheet.
Does everybody know what we're talking about? That we're talking about a cut-off. In the past, we've allowed people to cut off and charge them nothing. And we cut off water, sewer, and garbage. But what we did not recover from all those people cutting off was the debt service that continues throughout time. So the base charge is intended to fairly share the base charge or the overhead expenses of these two enterprise funds with all the users.
Subtracting the 4,000 gallons of usage, which is 324 per thousand, so you multiply it times 4, would change it from 3581 to 2385. For sewer, it would change from 4521 to 3077. But I would argue we are not consumption based, so it is 0 to 4,000. It is not 1 to 4,000. So even if you're off, you should pay the same rate as everybody else. Also, if you live in a condo and you are vacant for 6 months, you can't shut your water off. That condo is still paying your 4,000 gallons. So that's all I got for my piece. That's the accountant talking.
And I disagree with the accountant side. I think that if you're going to pay a cutoff fee and you're going to pay a cut-on fee, that you shouldn't have to pay for consumption when you're, and I know we're not consumption-based. We talked about that. Everybody would be paying a heck of a lot more than they're paying if we went to a consumption-based system. Because, let me back up a little bit, because people are looking at me like, what are you talking about? In Mexico Beach for the last several years, we provided 4,000 gallons of water and 4,000 gallons of sewer to everybody who signs up for water and sewer service. We had a guy come in last year to look at our water situation and what we charged and everything. He said, oh, you're going to go broke. You need to charge so much more. During the budget process, we looked at least 3 scenarios of changing that base down to 3,000 gallons, changing it to 2,000 gallons, because some of you only use 2,000 gallons. So is it fair for you to pay, we're only talking a few dollars really, for a lot of water. But we found that even the people that have 2,000 sometimes use 4, And then sometimes the people that use 4 don't use any at all because they go off somewhere. But it's still, we gotta have some base rate to charge everybody. What we attempted to do through the budget cycle was to keep our water and sewer rates essentially the same, no increase, and also keep the base of 4,000 gallons the same, because we've all kind of got used to that. Now, could you save a little money? Like one person in a household, it's more likely that that person will use 2,000 gallons than 4. And if we actually charge on the consumption system, that person will pay a little less than they pay now. The same token, a person with a household with 3 people may actually end up paying a lot more than they pay now. Instead of $26 for water, they may be paying $40 for the same 4,000 gallons or about 4,000 gallons. So we kind of tried to come to a compromise, but at the same time, we discovered one reason that we're not collecting what we need to collect in the water and sewer funds is because debt service on both these funds, which are financed for 30 years, it continues every month for every single dwelling in town. Whether you're cut on or you're cut off, the debt service continues. So the folks that are cutting off and leaving, they're not having to support the debt service. And that's not fair to everybody else. So what we tried to put in here, what Mr. Welly and I disagree on, he thinks that cutoff rate should be about $80, give or take, and I say it should be about $54. If you're cut off, I don't think you should pay for that 4,000 gallons that's the base that's included in everybody's, because you're certainly not using it if you're turned off. But it's up to the council to decide, because we've already had a first reading of this, we've got to get it straight before the second reading, whichever way it's going to go. I just don't believe they should pay $80 when they're cut off. $85. And condos, I'm sorry, but you're on a central meter.
So with the base, if we just use the base, then a household, not a condo, a household, if they asked to have their water cut off, would be paying $54.62.
$56.22.
Okay.
That number is not on there anywhere. I have to put it in.
No, I was adding, but I must,
Yeah.
I had,
Okay.
I had 2385 and 3077, so
Yeah, I did too.
I must have missed a digit.
Utility tax of $1.60
Oh,
on
okay,
water.
Fine, okay. So 5662 versus what you're saying is that they should, you're saying originally
It should be
that
the
they
base
should
rate
pay
that's in
the
here.
base rate.
If you're turned on and use 10 gallons, you're still paying for 4,000.
But you're turned on and you have the privilege of using 4,000. If you're turned off, you can't. But I think with just this change to incorporate a base rate for everybody is going to be a tremendous financial improvement into the system.
$159,664.80.
Can we,
What, at $56?
$159,664.80 is what 50 whatever generates.
Yeah, that's what we've foregone year after year after year for the people just cutting off.
so could we use that rate, the base, for this year? And then when budget time comes, if we're in a deficit or if we see that that wasn't what we needed to cover things with, then go up to the 4,000?
I'm hoping next year we'll look at a consumption schedule and switch entirely to consumption.
I agree. No, I think we should get to consumption. But I think the $56 is fair enough. I mean, we can't charge them, like he says, you know, you got your water off, you can't use any sewer. And the 56 will make $100 and something thousand difference.
I know that sounds like a lot of money, but when you're dealing with a water and sewer fund that costs a couple of $1 million a year, it's not a lot, but it's a big help. It keeps our rates from going up.
Well, and it keeps the people that live here who decide to leave here for 6 months, helping pay
The debt
pay
service.
the debt service. And if they don't, then the people that live here year-round are getting hit harder for the debt service than they should. So I think this is only fair all the way around. Of course, people that have been in the habit of cutting off are going to be raising Cain when they find out they're going to wind up paying $50 or $60 a month anyway, but that's only fair to everybody else.
And I think since they haven't done it before, this would be easier for them to understand the debt versus the $80 for the base of $4,000.
I have had one individual contact me with this, and they didn't like, of course, the full payment that was talking, but they understood the need for them to pay for debt service. That really wasn't an issue. It was over and above the base cost of debt and everything else that goes into it. They were, even though they didn't like paying extra money, they understood it and were willing to, to accept that. So I think the basic debt service coverage would be good. That gives us more money, that helps our citizens pay for our bills that they should pay.
Are we satisfied with that number?
I am.
Okay, to incorporate that number into that paragraph.
And just for clarification, the statute that I shared with staff today, it doesn't really impact the way we do the adoption, it's the notice. So now that we have all the numbers chosen, we can include all those numbers in the notice, which it's just additional language will be on the next bill.
Yeah.
So we will not do the reading next week. It'll be November, so we'll miss 1 month's billing. But
that's fine.
Does that have to be a special mail out, or can that just go on the back of a water bill?
It can go with the regular bill.
I would recommend we put it on a separate piece of paper. I've talked to a lot of citizens that don't look at the back of the water bill, and I've also talked to a lot of people that we do electronic billing. Anything we send out in the water bill packet, if they don't get a packet, they don't know. So we're going to have to do a straight mail. I don't know how many people we do electronically. They say they never get a water bill at all. They just get a deduction.
There's 100 and something, I think.
Does that sound correct?
I have no idea.
I've had several people call me and say, well, we don't get a water bill, so we don't know. We just have automatic deduction from our checking account.
I get a water bill.
I get a water bill.
And you do that, and you use that system?
It's all user-based. It's how they enroll when
Do
they
you get it
sign.
electronically?
Yeah, if they don't check the box that they want a bill, they're not going to get one. So when they sign up, you have to say you want a bill.
Okay, so that's the answer to that. Okay. All right, planning and zoning recommendations.
The recommendation from planning and zoning sounds much simpler than the discussion was. We talked about a lot of different things during the discussion, went around in circles quite a few times, and in the very end, there was a motion to say that the 2 current food trailers in town should be grandfathered and not allow any more. And then there was a subsequent motion after that said that the 2 current food trailers are okay, but at which time they sell to someone else and they lose their grandfather status. So that's the recommendation. Is that what the city council wants to do, or do you want to discuss it at another meeting, or it's in your court now?
Based on that recommendation, we've got a little paperwork to do to document that if we adopt it.
Correct. Need to put it in some sort of ordinance form.
Now, I will ask this question. We're still only talking about food trailers.
That is correct.
We're not talking about festival vendors,
Not at all.
temporary use. We're not talking about peddlers.
Correct.
Just food trailers.
That is correct.
Well, I'm glad that P&Z decided to keep the 2 remaining Mr. G's and Shuby's. I hope that that will be put to rest now for a while. Just keep them, they've been successful, they've added a little flavor to our city. You know, I hope we don't decide to change this again next year. I understand where I don't understand where PNC. I have no problem with a few other trailers if we could pick and choose what we wanted, but that wasn't the option. So I'm comfortable with that as long as we don't bring up Mr. G's and Shuby's again next year and question their validity.
What are we calling a peddler?
Pardon me?
I was asking, a peddler, what exactly is a peddler?
No, it's defined in our code, but an example of a peddler would be Jerry Wallace's tomato stand that sets up in front of Parker Realty for a day.
Oh.
You get a license for that. It's associated with a spot, and he can only do it for that day.
So we are in total control of peddlers?
Yes, by license.
And they have to be in a commercial area too.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Any other question about that? Okay, let's get our paperwork straight. Right off the top of my head, I can't think exactly what we need to do.
I'll confer with legal counsel.
All right. Great.
When we initially looked at this, the issue was that it's language in the LDR was not as clear as it could have been. So we'll clean up the language, make it very direct and obvious what the rule is. We'll build in some language about the grandfather.
Okay, under miscellaneous from the table.
I do have something, Your Honor. Just wanted to bring this to your attention. I have not spoken with the owner of the marina yet, but it came to our attention that they are zoned general commercial. If you look at the LDR, a marina is allowed in a tourist commercial area, but not general commercial. Question is, I don't think it's incumbent upon us to expect the owner of the marina to pay for the rezoning process, because he didn't do anything. So is that something we want to address, or you just want to leave it alone?
Can he function his business under the zoning that it's on?
He can if no one fusses about it, but in the general commercial, there is no provision for a marina. It's only in tourist commercial.
How did this happen to come up?
There was a realtor that called the office and inquired about it. And at that point, it filtered up to my desk, and I looked at the LDR, and they're quite right. Marina is only in the tourist commercial area.
I have an opinion, since we even allow residential to be built on general commercial and everything else. I think it's an oversight that the word marina wasn't included on the list of general commercial buildings. It's certainly general commercial.
The most simple way to tackle this really is to add the word marina in the uses of the general commercial, to be honest with you. So rezoning wouldn't be the smartest way to go, honestly.
Oh, absolutely not. No, it's just a word that's omitted. I don't think every general commercial activity could have possibly been listed in the LDR.
Correct.
I mean, obviously, some things are very obviously commercial.
I think it's about time we did something that was real simple.
I agree.
Okay, I'll bring it up with the plan and zoning folks at next month's meeting. We'll get that ball rolling.
Great. Anything else? Question? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question mainly for Mel, but I'm Irene Lupo, and you probably remember me.
I remember Miss Lupo.
But Mel, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I'll be starting to build on my lot at long last. And according to you, I have to be 3 feet above the crown of the road when I build my house. Now, there probably this much off of the ground. There's a house on 7th Street that's like that. Is that law that applies to me not applying to these people?
It applies to all, but I couldn't possibly address that without looking at the other ones that you're talking about.
I'm just concerned.
Yeah, give me a call tomorrow and give me those addresses, and we'll take a look at it.
Just don't understand. Thank you, Mel.
I mean, you weren't at the last meeting, but we discussed that. You're in that A shallow floodplain.
Yes,
Uh,
on New
it's-
Mexico.
yeah,
And
that
all
third-
the rest of the houses on New Mexico
Yeah.
are like this off of the ground.
The 3 feet measures to the floor inside the house.
Right.
Okay?
Right, so if I understand, the floor is the level. You may have to have 5 steps to get up to the floor, but that's the level of the 3 foot.
That's right. That's right.
And like I said, these other places, they are like this.
We had to look at all that, but they may not be in the floodplain first,
Well, the
but they would
house on
decide to be a
7th
foot above.
Avenue, they had to fill in much more because it was definitely flooded.
But be careful of this, what I'm saying, though. The level of the first floor
Yes, sir.
has to be 1 foot if you're not in a floodplain, and has to be 3 feet if you are in a floodplain.
Right.
So even if they're building their foundation that far off the ground, their floor still may be a foot above that.
It can't be, Tom.
Well, it can be.
When you walk in the house,
If you have-
don't step up into the house, you're on that
Wait.
cement level.
Well, I'll be happy to come over there with you, but that's
Oh, you
that's
did already,
I
Tom.
know.
You spent an hour or 2 with that
And you're a lovely person.
And I appreciated it more than you'll ever know.
But-
And I lost my cool with Mel, and
Really?
he sent me outside to talk to Miss Royce and Sassy while you two finished your little meeting there. I remember it
and that's
well.
okay.
And I still apologize for losing my cool. I just don't.
We're gonna make sure that you get a fair shake, guaranteed.
I'm counting on.
I bet you are. And we're
What
gonna do it.
What street are you building on?
On New Mexico,
New Mexico.
sir, and all the other houses.
I wouldn't worry about it being 3 feet. At one time or another, a lot of that has been underwater.
Yes, sir, and it's all been built up.
Well, I had lots on that street. I know what I'm talking about. And you know what you're
She's
talking
right
about.
next to your lot, so that's,
Oh,
there you
yeah?
go.
Okay.
There you go. All right.
If I were gonna build a house there, I'd build it 3 feet up.
Nick, you have anything
Well, I
else?
don't want mine on the ground, that's what I told them, you know, I don't wanna be down on the dirt. I'm from Georgia, and I'm used to being up off the ground.
I thought everybody was from Georgia.
Okay.
Maybe you wouldn't have any people living here if you took Georgia and Alabama away.
Nick, do you have anything else for us?
Yeah, just a brief comment. While we were doing that discussion, I looked at the LDR. I'm comfortable that the general commercial can allow marina. It's intended to be the more intense uses, and it doesn't need to list everything.
Yeah, great. Okay, great. Motion to adjourn.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Only once in a year and a half have I got this right. Let's review the agenda for the meeting.
Took me a year to get the agenda right, so. All right. Call to order, invocation, pledge of allegiance, roll call, mayor's comment, council comments, citizen comments, consent agenda. There's 5 cents of minutes, both budget hearings and our usual minutes. Scheduled appearances, I have Dewberry. I think that's the only one. On ordinances, we will have a second reading of ordinance 644, which is the personnel policies. Ordinance 651, you can cross out and remove. That's the water and sewer that will wait until November. Ordinance 652, which is the 5-year schedule of capital improvements. Insert a first reading of the Corey PUD ordinance. That's not up there. Surplus property. And then department reports, announcements, and adjournment. Anything I'm missing?
When, or if I missed it, the vacant lots,
Mhm.
when are we going to,
November.
okay,
Because I have to put it in the water bill.
Pardon me?
Because it has to be sent out in the water bill that we're going to change rates. So it'll go out at the end.
No, I meant the
No,
vacant
vacancies.
lots for the...
Parking boats and all that.
You've referred that to planning and zoning.
You're right,
That's
you're right. Good, thanks.
Just one more reminder, we're meeting in November on the 9th,
I will not be here, but yes.
on Wednesday, the 9th, not the 8th, because 8th is voting day.
Could I ask one question?
Yep.
Y'all agree that the two Shoobies and Mr. G's were grandfathered in? Is that something that's said and done and don't have to be voted on, or
We
is it
have-
coming up again in November, or
We have to draft an ordinance to allow that. That's,
is what?
we have to draft an ordinance, do 2 readings.
That takes
It's going to take a couple
another
months,
2 months, or what?
at least 2.
Yep,
Another 2 months?
2 voting meetings, but it's kind of decided.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you have the intent of the council at this point, so you're safe.
Yes, ma'am.
At this point, you have the intent of the council, which is to go forward with the grandfathering.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the answer to Councilperson Albright's question about the vacant lots?
It's been referred to planning and zoning and will be discussed at their next meeting. Yep.
Okay. Now, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you for coming.